So I think we're just going to get started. It's going to be pretty quick. And let me just start by, hold on for just 1 second. So it sounds like you guys are doing a good job already, but if you've, so you have muted, and that sounds great. During the presentation, we're just going to run through fairly quickly. If you want to send your questions via the online interface, we can do so. Depending on the number of actually attendants, we might open up and unmute at the end of this rather than doing it by the online questions, especially if you'd like to stick around. So the theme of today is easily connect your enterprise to the cloud and boost your productivity. My name is Anne-Marie Berger. I'm managing partner of Forefront. Carl Weiss, Enterprise Integration Manager, will also be attending and actually doing our demo. And we'll get started. So the agenda for today is an introduction to the IBM Cast Iron software, a little bit about the business value of using IBM Cast Iron versus obviously coding by yourselves, which unfortunately a lot of our clients still try to do. We have a very quick case study. Then Carl will demo a cast iron and look at tips and how to configure and all that sort of stuff on for about a 10-15 minute demo max. We'll have a little bit of QA and learn more. So the integration landscape today is that business users are really embracing the cloud, and what that means is that the cloud allows businesses to have more control over the application and drive rapid changes. As we know, if you guys happen to use Salesforce or any of the other cloud systems, they go ahead and change fields and objects and add formulas on the fly. This actually is a challenge for IT groups because they cannot really respond, especially if they don't have the right tools in place to the integration process. It's also very important that the more and more Salesforce.com and even Sugar CRM or NetSuite or all those things are actually pulling in a lot more data from their ERPs. You're really driving the value of your CRM by pulling in data from either inventory or orders or contract data or things of that nature. Those cloud applications like Salesforce and NetSuite, same thing that Cast Iron is actually doing. They're actually empowering change on the fly, and that's really what the IBM Cast Iron brings to the integration platform area. So how does it do that? There's a, it's pretty simple actually. You've got to connect between the source and the target, and IBM Cast Iron brings a plethora of connectors that you can leverage out of the box. You need to do transformations because the source and target data might not be exactly the same. For example, the dates are different, or you might want to concatenate dates, or you might want to have business rules about the transformation. If it's under this circumstance, then this field needs to be changed. There's a whole set of logic that applies. Integration is not about data. Integration is about process. So, for example, if you need to integrate your opportunities to your ERP, you obviously have to have your accounts in there first and your products in there first. So there's a whole logic component and process and orchestration component involved with that. The other area that's a huge benefit with IBM Cast Iron is its management. It's an area that most business people don't really understand, and the IT people sometimes just leave it on the side. It's something that doesn't happen. They got it working, and that's all they care about. But the fact of the matter is that we spend a lot of time helping our clients trying to troubleshoot what actually physically happened to that transformation or that piece of data that was supposed to go in, and why didn't it go in. And being able to track that with Cast Iron is just amazing, and it's worth its weight in gold. So if we go and talk about the IBM process, if you will, connectivity is huge. So you're actually using connectors, and IBM Cast Iron is connected to just about every system that's out there. Obviously, it has specialized connectors for Salesforce.com and for SAP and for Siebel and JD Edwards, and then has very extensive experience with all the different types of web services and APIs that are out there. Another area that's quite unique to a Cast Iron actually is the fact that you've got deployment flexibility, and this speaks to whatever the IT group wants, or what other compliance wants, or whatever your challenges are from a production area. So let's say, for example, you want to do a pure cloud solution. That's cool. If you want to use the appliance, we have people who want to use the appliance. They can use something like Data Power or general appliances, and that's really when you want millions of transactions to be going in at a time. Or you might just want the idea of plug and play and off you go. A third area is the virtual appliance, and there you actually put the application on a virtual server, and you're up and running. What's cool about Cast Iron is you develop it once in either of these environments, and then you can port it to these 3 different environments very, very, very easily. So say you want to start with a simple cloud solution, and then you decided you're going to now do an integration that is going to have millions of transactions an hour or more. Then you just take that application and publish it to appliance, no rework. That's really a pretty cool deal. Another area is what we call repeatable success. This is a big area of differentiation for Cast Iron. They have the concept of tips. If you're used to Salesforce App Exchange, this is like tips exchange, and tips are really templates to how to get started. There's a community of people who have done it. There are IBM professional services that have put tips out there, and you can also develop your own tips that your other developers can use on the fly. A very, very big differentiator out there in the integration world. And the last area that we'll talk about is the type of projects you can do with Cast Iron. Most people are very familiar with the data migration. That's taking data out of an old system really and moving into a new system. You're deprecating the old system. Process integration is CRM to ERP. That is what we talked about before with the accounts and contacts going in first, maybe parent accounts going in before that, getting your products in there, making sure your salespeople are in there. Then you can put in your orders and order line items. So that's really the logic in the process and orchestration integration. Another area that really is not as well understood, and most people should understand it, is actually called UI mashup. And here what you're doing is actually a little bit like when you put in an address and you go to Google, and Google presents back to you the maps. You're actually not bringing in the data, you're displaying the data. So you're not moving data from a system, and this often helps with getting information in there, but you've got compliance issues in terms of not moving data from one system to the other. So that's another area of, that IBM Cast Iron does a tremendous job. Let's talk about business value and why are you leveraging, and what does it mean from a cost basis, and what are you saving? We've actually got hundreds of clients. We've been doing integration for about 13 years. We've got hundreds of clients, and one of the things that we've noticed is we still have some clients that, before they knew us, started coding stuff, and we've still got a couple of clients that are a little stubborn, but most of them have moved. And why have they moved is because actually, in many cases, what forced them to move is they can't troubleshoot, and they're dependent on one guy or one girl who decides to go on vacation for 3 weeks at the wrong time, and you can't find out what's going on. So that's one of the reasons, but one of the biggest reasons you guys should move is because it's actually costing you a fortune. And when you do it with custom code in particular, this is a typical 1-year application, especially if you're doing integrations and you're starting to get into the integration world. CRM to back office typical integrations are about 6. Again, accounts, contacts, products, salespeople, opportunities, things of that nature. The average time of coding and designing and building and developing per connection is about 120 hours. Most people do an average of 4 projects per year because you've got line of businesses, you've got people going to cloud CRM or HR systems. I mean, it's really exploding in terms of the number of connections that are out there. And because it's all hard-coded, the reuse is very, very limited. We put that about 10%. If you take your developer cost, which a typical IT developer cost today believe it or not, even in the best of worlds, is about $100 per hour. And that's including a fully burdened because you've got PTOs, you've got training, you've got all these sort of stuff. So your cost for something like that is actually $259,000, taking into account the 10% reuse component. If we do it with a cast iron, you have an average time to design and build and test and deploy is 60% reduced. That's because of all the tips, that's because of all the connectors, that's because when people change their mind, it's just drag and drop. So there's a huge uptick in the amount of value that cast iron is bringing. Also, your reuse. Not only are you reusing accounts and contacts for your ERP, but you may be using it for your revenue recognition system. So you've got pieces done already that you can really reuse. The other thing is that you really don't need a very high-level developer to do this. So your end cost for your person that is going to be doing this is usually less expensive. They're not big Java developers or expensive experience. So at $66 an hour, you're actually saving there. So a typical estimated cast iron integration is about $53,000, and that's a huge saving. That's $200,000 savings, typically in the first year. So it's not just, it's not just cost savings, although I like to point that out, but the fact that you can actually bring more data into your systems is also a big deal. So looking at this benefits breakdown structure, obviously you've got templates and you've got configuration and you've got connectors, which is big. But as I said, changes really get you. Doing regression testing and things of that nature, you still have to do it, but it's drag and drop in cast iron. Reducing and researching, resolving the data errors or connectivity errors or whatever errors may have been introduced is huge with cast iron. I think that's really underestimated. It's saying that it's a small amount here. I've seen it be a lot more than that. And actually, a lot of business users get upset and don't understand why the IT guys can't figure it out. Well, if they had cast iron, they'd figure it out much faster. The last area is obviously you're increasing your revenue because you're bringing a lot of data into to Salesforce or your product. So you're really increasing productivity. You're not shipping or not promising inventory when it's not there, things of that nature. Okay, so I talked very quickly about one of our case studies. It's actually a manufacturer and supplier of advanced wireless systems. They have Salesforce, and believe it or not, they're actually been applying for 4 or 5 years using cast iron. But they were integrating before to an old ERP called Expandable. It was sure fun trying to integrate. But recently, in December of this year, they actually went and they upgraded to SAP by Design, which is a cloud-based ERP. SAP is trying to get into the same business as NetSuite because they're losing big time with their monolithic system. But it really was the monolithic system. I mean, in terms of the API, I won't bore you to tears, but there's something called a WSDL, which is really the API that had to be downloaded. We kept having to redo the WSDL. If you had been trying to do this in code, you'd have never figured it out because I think we had to change the WSDL about 30 times to get that application to run. There was just no way you'd have been able to figure out how to work with this WSDL. It was very nasty. Hopefully nobody has SAP by Design that's on this call. But it was, I mean, huge productivity gains all the same in terms of the financial view and the fact that they're actually deployed throughout the world. So let's looking at this. We were integrating Sales Cloud and Service Cloud and Partner Portal and SCP Design. Another component we haven't shown on here is the logistics vendor, their third-party logistics vendor, which is Agility, and their manufacturing facilities in China and in Amsterdam. So a great win overall for productivity and getting everything into Salesforce.com, using the same tools that they already have. So basically, SCP Design is supply chain management smart, inventory, orders, and financials. and the integration with Salesforce, where you've got sales and service and global communications, with the serial numbers being available for visibility for the end users that are put into SAP by Design and pulled over to Salesforce.com. So enough yapping, and I am going to, we're going to turn this over to Carl. Basically, we're going to show you what we do and how we do it in Cast Iron, and I'm going to take a little break and have Carl take over. Carl, I'm about to make you presenter.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is.
Go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Weiss, and I'm the manager of enterprise integration here at Forefront. What we're going to be walking through is a brief demo of the Cast Iron integration tool. This is by no means a deep dive. Our deep dive sessions generally run between an hour and a half and 2 hours, and we're gonna pull this one out in about 10 minutes. So it's going to be very quick. We're going to focus on the tips, which Anne-Marie had mentioned earlier in the call, which is the template integration process. And we have this tip exchange here that we can search for, in this case, Salesforce, to retrieve information about templated products. And these tips can be used to get a project running in a matter of minutes, or provide insight into common integration events, like sending emails with multiple MIME attachments. It's just that additional, safety net to assist in getting the project done that much faster. Utilizing these tips, if you have a similar business use case, you can really, as you'll see in our demo, move a project and implement these in just a matter of minutes, going through a simple configuration wizard. So as you can see on our tips interface here, we have multiple source and target connectors. Here we have samples connected to Oracle and Salesforce, Salesforce and Right Now, Salesforce and DataStage, HTTP and Salesforce Chatter, SAP and Salesforce, NetSuite, Custom CRM, Siebel, CSV, Google Apps. There's numerous different tips that are available for download. And these tips are available. They're uploaded by users via an open forum. Any Cast Iron user can upload a tip that they feel might be helpful or provide easy access to anyone else in the community. There's also tips here that you see, these green checkboxes, which are certified by IBM, and these are developed by the IBM Professional Services Group. So they've gone through the certification program, and they've been reviewed by IBM. Users can also rate the tips as they download, as you can see with this one here. This one got 5 stars, 72 downloads, and they can also leave reviews as far as how helpful these tips were for the users. So if you wanted to take a look at one of these tips, you would simply just have to download and then open up and launch, and it'll launch in a configuration wizard. Now the tip that we have open in the background here, we're just going to cancel this out, and this is similar to our demo that we're going to be presenting. So this is a simple introductory page providing some information on what this tip is, and what we're going to show in this demo is we're going to pull in for account information from Salesforce and insert it into a SQL database. And then we'll access that database via a custom .NET application, just to demo some of that functionality. So we can just work through this wizard. Again, it's a click not code approach. A lot of the implementations or features are drag and drop, and very easy to work from. So here you can see we're on our configuration page, and these configurations are parameters that are often changed throughout the project or through specific project life cycles and deployments, i.e. the username and password for a database would change going from dev to QA to production, as well as passwords expire, passwords change. Endpoint URL for Salesforce here. If we're using development, we'd obviously be connecting with test. So these are just configurations that add more flexibility to your projects and allow them to be modified from a simple configuration as opposed to entering the project and changing those variables. So let's take a step to the next one here. And here we're just going to verify our connectivity as part of this wizard-based approach. Again, we have our username and password and our login URL, which came from the previous screen as part of the configuration parameters. So we could click our test connectivity and verify that we're able to connect. And we'll step through a similar thing for the database connectivity. So here we can see we have our database type. In this instance, we're connected to a SQL server, but that's certainly not the only database that Cast Iron can connect to. We have DB2, Formix, MySQL, Oracle, Sybase, as well as generic JDBC drivers. So there's really a plethora of connections that we connect to on the database side here. And we go through and just verify our connectivity, and we verify our username, password, server, table, database, such. So if we click next to our next step, this is the meat of the Cast Iron integration in my mind, which is really the transformation and mapping of the data. As you can see here, we have some of our fields mapped, but there's a state which is not mapped. So the mapping is really just as straightforward as clicking and dragging. So we're going to drag our data from the Salesforce side here over to our database side and map our billing state to our state field in our database table. Now, one other thing you may have noticed is this lower pane here. If we expand this, this will show us an overview of this full orchestration. And if we just kind of walk through this, we could see that we're doing a scheduled job activity, which will run every day, minute, 5 seconds, hour, any of available schedules. Runs a query on Salesforce records, and then goes through a programming try-catch block. Update the rivers in the database, create some job keys for management and visibility in the reporting UI, and if that fails, write an XML failure and create some job keys which shows that failure or failed application. If this is successful, then we update back into Salesforce and set the last integrated runtime. Again, a fairly basic process just to illustrate what we can do here. So let's take a look back at the mapping pane real quick. Now there's another field that we have here that we want to map, which is this SLA level. And in order to have this field be useful to us, what we're going to need to do is utilize some functions and do some transformation of data. So if we click on this functions bar here, this will open up our Cast Iron functions window. And these are just some of the functions that we have available at Cast Iron. Again, string functions, math functions, count, ceiling, multiply, divide, sum, date functions, cast functions, encoding, decoding, getting current time. Any functions that don't exist in here can be created as custom functions, and these custom functions utilize JavaScript to manipulate the data. We're going to do a simple uppercase, and then we're going to concatenate. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take our SLA field, which will give SLA status of gold, premium, silver, what have you. And we're going to set that to uppercase, then concatenate that with the SLA expiration date. And then we're going to map that to the SLA level. So here, as you can see, we mapped multiple functions, join them together to get our output. And what we want to do here is we have an uppercase function of our SLA and our expiration date, but we're really going to need to put a space in there. Otherwise, that's going to be a little messy. So let's restructure these. We can simply just click up, rearrange these, and make sure I got my space in there. We'll put 2 in there just to be safe. Okay, and then we just simply, apply our function graph. So now we're taking the data from Salesforce, we're mapping it into our database, and we're doing some minor transformation of that data for this SLA level field. I'm just going to collapse this function graph again and click Next. Now the next step in our activity after this update rows, is where we were just doing our mapping, is to pull back the information and update the Salesforce accounts. So one thing I wanted to point out here is that the Cast Iron uses the Salesforce metadata API to pull down a list of all the available objects in the organization. So this will pull back any custom objects, any new fields, any changes. You can see we have some custom objects right here, and then we can then use those in our mapping to make any changes or any field mappings. We can also refresh our schema, and it'll pull it down dynamically and add any additional fields that have been updated or changed since the last time the schema was refreshed. One other thing to point out is that we can use the external IDs within Salesforce to update a record, in this case the account, by an account external ID. And that external ID can be a database row in the source system. That way we don't have to do another lookup call into Salesforce in order to determine what its Salesforce ID is in order to update that record. And one of the things which is a real help for saving API calls is the ability to look up relationships based on the external ID as well. And that's done simply just by clicking this drop-down and changing that value. And then we can map in this example, the database row ID directly to the parent ID field, and the parent ID will be looked up in Salesforce and pulled back. Okay, so If we click Next, that brings us to the end of our configuration side, except for publishing to the appliance. Again, this can be published to a physical or virtual or a cloud appliance. Obviously, save our changes and then click OK. I'm not going to push it up there; it's already up there at this point. So that's simple. How simple it is to deploy a project based off of a tip. And these tips are not locked into the tips. Let me just click on Finish here. Here's where we can enter our survey information, what have you. We're not going to do that in this case. But these tips you're not locked into the tip. If you want to add any additional functionality or make any changes to it, now that the tip has been configured and those configuration parameters have been set and the additional mappings have been updated, you can go and add activities and everything you would normally do with Cast Iron. So let's just take a look how a tip like this would impact our demo. Let me just pull over our, okay. So here's our demo custom application just built on .NET, which is sitting on top of our SQL database, which we're going to integrate. And here's our accounts pane. You can see that this accounts pane is currently empty. Let's refresh. So what we're going to do is we're going to log into Salesforce. I'm already logged in. And we're just going to create a new account. We'll call it CI test. Oh, okay. Let's edit the account. Add some more data. And we'll choose an industry. Choose a type, set an account number, and we'll set a phone number. And their key piece is really going to be the SLA expiration date, which we'll set to today, and set our status to gold here. Just see if there's anything else we're maybe missing. Now let's set a ticker symbol too, just for fun. Google's a good one. So let's save a record. And from right now, what we did in Salesforce here is to build in just a HTTP callout to call our integration and initiate that from the Salesforce side. So I'm just going to click on this integrate hyperlink here, and that's going to call our process that we had published to our appliance and integrate the record into our database. And we're bringing back some reporting. This wouldn't be very useful in the actual business environment, but to see this displayed here is helpful for a test scenario. So now we're just going to step back to our custom application here. And we'll just click on refresh and see our data has been updated with our gold all in uppercase and our summary, our expiration date visible. And if we wanted to change anything, it's really just as simple as changing the record, saving it, and again calling the integrate. And you can see here when we refresh our page that the integration, the last integrated time is updated, 5:30, corresponding to the last modified time. We're in GMT here, so. And then we can just reload our page on this side and see our updated change. We can also initiate that from the side just by syncing the accounts, which will pull back all the accounts over. Now it's worth noting that those aren't the only ways to call integration. There's really there's many ways to integrate from Salesforce, outbound messages, web service calls, polling operations. This HTTP post via hyperlink is just one of those many options. And that really concludes our quick demo. Let me hand it back to Anne-Marie.
Okay, that was very, very, very quick. I hope people weren't too bored, but we can actually do some more talking about this or get on the phone with you guys afterwards if you want to do that. Let me show my screen here. Okay. Let's bring this back up. And in terms of lessons learned, I mean, I think because we've been doing integrations for so long, we just want to have some pointers for you guys. One of the biggest things I think that people do not, saying again, can anybody see this? Carl, can you see this? Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, okay, one of the biggest things I think that needs to be understood is that integration is about process, not about data. So a lot of people spend time thinking about just the maps and transformations, but really the key area is really understanding your process and getting that down pat. Another gotcha that we tend to find is really master data management. when you're integrating between two systems and you're doing BiSync, it's cool if you're bringing just one way. But if you're doing BiSync, really get to know who's the master on what field and spend a lot of time thinking about that before integrating. We do a huge amount of ERP integrations. I think we've only integrated with maybe about 60 or 70 ERPs. There's about 4,000 of them out there. But I think that the biggest challenge in these ERPs is, in spite of the fact that we've done an ERP, every single one is customized to the nth degree. And yes, you can get accounts up and running, but you may be surprised with what you think is going to happen. And so getting the tribal knowledge of people that are actually supporting the ERP systems is very, very key. Another area we've seen is the CRM to ERP integrations, is that we've seen a lot of our clients extend the life of their ERPs. A lot of times the data in the ERP, it's an older ERP, they don't want to change it out, it takes them 10, 15 years to change out an ERP. But by pulling the data and making it useful in Salesforce.com, for example, and now people are actually querying inventory out of Salesforce, not querying it out of the ERP, they've been able to not only get rid of licenses, but also extend the life of that ERP and have it really more do with financial components, maybe more than even the inventory and supply chain management, for example. So those are areas that I think that are very important, and that's really it. We're going to open up to a Q&A session right now. I don't see a lot of questions out here. Let's just go back into viewing it. And if you would like, I will, if you raise your hand, I can have you ask questions, or if you would like to have any other items that you would like to talk about. Right now in the questions, I don't see a lot.
Okay, this is Pat Phillips. As Anne-Marie mentioned earlier, I am the WebSphere Channels Rep supporting Forefront. And first, I want to thank everyone for attending today, and I hope you found the information here extremely useful. Forefront has many, many, many years of knowledge in this space. We look at them definitely as a subject matter expert for cloud integration and a big advocate of our cast iron technology. So I want to thank them for doing this for us today. Secondly, for those of you that will be attending the IBM Annual Impact Conference, which takes place starting April 29th in Las Vegas. Forefront will have a speaking session at Impact. It will be on Wednesday, May the 1st, from 1 to 2 o'clock. The session number is number 2473, and their customer, Ruckus Wireless, will also be joining them for that presentation.